Hey, hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Our usual time control within the blitz setting of 5 minutes. Okay, let's review these two games. I'm gonna turn the HVAC system. Turn that off. I hope that you can hear me a little better. It'll click off in about a minute or two. Testing different lighting settings. Yeah, whatever. We'll keep it like this. Save a few watts. Save a few. Whatever the appropriate unit of energy or lumens would be. All right. So this is the first of the two games that I just aired, and it didn't take very long. There might not be too much to say about this. This is common in the Scandinavian defense and certain other defenses. There's already Paranov, I believe, in the Steiner variation of the French. That at some point White puts a bishop on d2 behind the knight on c3, exposing, or at least potentially exposing black to a discovered attack, which doesn't always mean the end of the game, but is kind of like a little bit too scary, to be honest. So very often black will do exactly what my opponent did here, and that's to move to a safe square. Still active, attacking d4 and b2. Because this is a strong move. The computer catalogs this as a good move. I think it's better than what I would consider the alternative, which would be queen d8. Queen d8 down here, and e6 is a possibility, but then you're still in the middle of that potential discovered attack, so I'm not too hot on that. And g6 just doesn't do it for me. I like my opponent's move, b6, a lot better than these others, for the reasons posted. My opponent's attacking b2, attacking d4, and is not retreating all the way back to d8. I'll develop my knight. The pin on g4 is good, but nothing too special. I made that clear with my response. Bishop to b5 check, showing that I'm not wasting time to put my bishop on e2, because I can always just put the question to the bishop with pawn to h3, and upon captures, recapture with my queen, and actually quite nicely. Then this queen is on this long diagonal, is near the center of the board, is facing at a weak square that's behind only one black piece, and so on. So I feel like this works out nicely for white. Knight bd7, the self pin is fine here. What else? There's really either make a huge concession by bringing your bishop back, move your other knight in forward and have one less developed piece, or have your king lose his right to castle at any point by moving. Then can't castle afterwards. And anything other than those is even another level of absurdity. Perhaps though, knight c6 could be considered. Is black strong enough to withstand pawn to d5? I think not. So, like I say, once again, I think my opponent chose the right move with knight at b, to d7. Castling here is smart for white. There's not much else to do. I can't force anything. There's no good threat that might cause a sudden disrupting of the position. So castling is good and safe. And my opponent captures on f3. Like I said, the queen recaptures on f3 quite naturally. This is a move that should look natural to an experienced player that might not be natural to even an intermediate player. Queen takes f3 is thematically natural. The queen's developed here in a place where she has places to go, things to attack, and so on. You should apply this in your games when there's a pin on your f knight, h3, and then upon captures on f, queen captures on f, queen recaptures on f. It's thematic. Let's see, did I capitalize here? I think I did. Yes, queen takes b7 is the move. Rook to b8, and it's all over quicker than it would otherwise be, because queen takes b8 is checkmate, as the knight is pinned. Moves like rook to d8 kind of huddle up. You know, this king is surrounded by his bodyguards, but that would be better than instant checkmate for my opponent. Okay, so a quick game with an early checkmate. Yeah, very, very accurate, but I don't take all that much stock in that. I did play well, so I won't go against myself either. And let's take a look at this next game, a longer game, a little bit more back and forth, not as accurate. How many moves do we have? Something in like the 30s or so. Let's take a look. Queen finished on move 40, my opponent and I did. And there was some real good exchange of ideas. I had the black pieces. Here I need to know. I don't know here. I would normally, given this position again, I would most likely take towards the center with pawn takes d4. Though, with c takes d4. What is this? These are both c takes d4. Okay, so this here, e takes d4 and c takes d4 are quite close to each other in their result. As a rule, you're more likely going to most often you're going to want to capture towards the center, wherever towards the center is. If it's on the A file, then it's capturing towards the D file. If it's on the H file, then it's capturing towards the E file. If it's on the G file, then capturing towards the E file is also towards the center. My point is, it depends on where the pawn is located, okay? So capturing towards the center, pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. And we throw a check in here to help develop my dark squared bishop. My opponent goes in for this pin on c3, thinking, and I think correctly so, if I recall correctly, that this knight will withstand any attacks. Queen to e7 here. I mostly just want my center secure, and there's a mistake based off of d takes e5 anyway. No computers. Stockfish indicates d takes e5, knight takes e5, queen d4, and knight takes f3. Some line there that's I'm sure is eventually beneficial for white or better for white, or even just d5. The typically in a position like this with white to move, it's either capture to open the position or push to keep the central pawns closed, locked and closed, and then that's another way to play this game. They lead to thematically different types of games. Closed positions are good for knights. Open positions are a little bit better for bishops in general. Doesn't have to be hard and fast, but in general. So my opponent played d5. Here I am glad to liquidate this knight. I thought there's always the possibility he'll capture with the pawn and leave doubles, but my opponent was smart to play queen takes f3, so I didn't get doubles on the f file there. And just to be honest, the queen takes f3 is a much better move anyway. Getting the queen out, aiming at a potentially weak square, defending the knight on white's knight on c3, and so it's just a more active move. Not just, but it's a more active move. Knight to f6. This move with a6 and then b5, we just brush back white's bishop from being a pressure in the center. We're going to want to move this pawn to d6 to halt the advance of white's d pawn. So that's part of the idea behind pawn to a6, or if it was, that's part of the idea behind pawn to a6, and if it wasn't, it's still a byproduct of that idea. This is what happened on the board when I did play d6. I rather like this position for black. I know that my Silicon friend Torch 2 favors white here. Well, why do I then like this position for black? It's the knight. No, I was gonna say that black's bishop is strong because of bishop to g4, but white's bishop can move bishop to g5, and that could be a pain in the butt even after h6. H4, g5, bishop back to g3. I don't know. Yeah, no, I mean, maybe the minor pieces. Now I'm thinking that white's dark squared bishop isn't doing all so well, and white's light squared bishop has some serious long-term issues. Hitting at his own pawn on d5, and even to readjust and still aim towards the center, white's light squared bishop is hitting at his own pawn on e4. This bishop is not great for white. The black pawns on the queen side have some other options for that bishop completely cut out. Maybe if you push on a4 first, then you could get this bishop in a more active space, even outpost him on c6 if things go your way. Alright. Anyway, it's close to even. I like black because of the knight being present in a closed position, because I feel that white's light squared bishop is not strong. It's been played against, and it's hard to find a place to put that bishop. White's dark squared bishop, on the other hand, is probably pretty darn good, but one of the most enticing squares, g5, I think does find that bishop pushed back with the pawn advances on the king side, unless maybe my opponent captures, and I capture, queen capture, captures, queen captures, and pawn captures. You have these double pawns. I don't know. Both white and black will have safe kings soon. And the material's even. I'm 38 seconds short on the clock as far as 13 moves into the game. Space is probably about even. Let's look at, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Well, it was mostly red anyway. Space. It's about even. So black has, black's most close to home central pawn is on the 6th rank. So white has a little bit more space in the center. Mobility. I was discussing a lot of that before. This bishop has issues with mobility, where this bishop does not. This knight is mobile. So, yeah, about even. Okay. Kingside castles. I am going to play bishop to g4 to develop my piece with an attack. Queen has to move, of course, to avoid massive material. Of course, to avoid her players. Of course, to avoid her player from experiencing a massive material loss. I liked rook to c8. I thought it was important to get that move in before castling. Now castles and these, the lines are sort of drawn here. All right. Yes, this was a key thing. This is about counter moves. What if I do this? What kind of counter move might my opponent have to disrupt my optimistic or realistic or both intentions? At bishop h6, things get serious real quick because of the checkmate threat that white is putting at g7. And this, you would want to know this counter move. Just cut off one piece's attack, like I did with bishop to g6. It was an excellent move. I'm glad I found it. I'm glad I played it. And now there's the pin is no longer haunting the g7 pawn. In fact, white's going to lose his h6 dark squared bishop if he doesn't get it the heck out of there. So it's a move made. It's back to the bishop goes to g5. It's like a move and then an immediate concession. So you know something was wrong with the first move of that 2-move set. Black picks up a pawn at e4, threatening and threatening. And I think my opponent, just for want of calculating, well, no, maybe not, calculated and found rook takes e4. So at least keep some of these pieces on the board, but now down the exchange and a pawn compared to where my opponent was after move 18 means that if I have enough time, I'm going to win this game. So my opponent got tricky here with the H pawn advance. You don't want to ignore these things, because if you get 1, 2, and 3 pieces all going in against the king, there are too many checkmating opportunities. So I decided to treat this very seriously, moving my king off of the G file rather, moving my king off of the G file, and therefore out of the potential pin that the G7 pawn would be under should white move his dark squared bishop. So I'm taking this threat with the H pawn very seriously. H6. This was sort of a tit for tat. You know, my opponent might play bishop takes h6, and then I play pawn to h6, and my king looks rather airy. But is it? I don't think it's really worth the material at that point. White can try to attack, but black will always be able to close up with bishop to h7. Mostly looking for trades, active piece placement, and keeping my king safe. Here it's indicated that my move e takes f4 was a blunder due to the one and only counter move that could have made it such. Queen takes d3. Queen takes d3. I think my opponent found that move, so here we are back in the thick of things. As black, we're still a pawn ahead, a piece of material ahead, but I felt, what are the words? Sad, downtrodden, crestfallen, upset, a little bit angry, sheepish, feeling sheepish. I felt dumb. All in light quantities, my friends. Not any one of these in a major way, but those kind of things about just leaving my bishop sitting there on d3. What the heck am I doing? Attacking a queen that is glad to be attacked so she can have time to gather a bishop on d3. Okay, so I gotta pull myself back into the lead, and let's see how I did that. Oh, you know what too? I have to be fair to me here too. Maybe a little bit of time pressure. 41 seconds though, and my opponent has fewer than mine, so I don't know. It's a goof. I goofed there. I'm pretty soon we're in a time scramble. That helped. Then I could pick up the bishop and then double on this back rank. It's hard to pick up these things in when people are doing pre-moves to make their moves. Of course, I'm going to play rook to f1 in a tournament game to keep this bishop mostly pinned to the rook. There's going to be some kind of reckoning done so that bishop can become active without losing the rook, right? But in pre-moves, it's not, super time crunches. It's not easy to figure exactly how these pieces will configure themselves in order for that to occur. My opponent's moving his king, probably back and forth. Yeah, moving his king back and forth to try to sweat out my 15.5 seconds here. And I'm doing the same, but having a path towards more material can make these type of scrambled endgames more obvious and easier and winnable. Rook takes d1, rook takes d1, rook takes d1. Now I have this breathing room. Even if he moves his king back and forth, well, I can move my rook up and down and say I get behind in whose time is ticking. Then you can even start to find a pathway towards collecting a few pawns. With the rook on e6, the pawn on t6 is going, gone. Right? And you can do that while pre-moving and just be glad that you won a really close game. So I'm going to say my opponent played very well here, too. I was impressed. Let's go. Not the same choice. So just pick up a few pawns. Eliminate threats when he challenges. You'll let him challenge, but eliminate his threat. The pawn. There's one less thing to worry about. All right. The game finished in this manner. Similar. My opponent timed out here. All right. Let's see. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night.